Hello, everyone. It's Brian at the Done Said That show. So, taking an observational look at things, with the changing of administrations in both the presidential level, the change in the balance in power on the federal level, and I would say a bit of an ideological shift among the populace, I've made an observation that, granted, I should have been aware of this just as folk truth from an early age, but now that I've witnessed it and born that truth within inside me, I can say this. People are stupid. They're absolutely stupid. They can't leave well enough alone. They have the absolute hardest time in the world not acting like jackasses and imposing their ideological views on other people and forcing other people to live to their values. I'll give you an example. The contrast point. You have times during the let's say the Biden administration in the United States, there was a lot of left-leaning views where it became important to teach children about sexuality in the grade school level, or to have the awareness of a very tiny segment of the population be put everywhere. The reviews of having your diversity crowd and all of your victimhood parade or victimhood marathons, Olympics. Sorry, I got my terms mixed up. Get your victimhood Olympics going on. You had every single progressive wokey thing getting prominence and getting shoved in our faces. And I definitely feel that there was a pushback against that where people said, whoa, 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 whoa. Slow down there, Sparky. That's a little bit too much. We don't want that stuff shoved down our throats anymore. We just want to live our lives. Then we threw in the pragmatic stuff like economic policy, which led to price pressures with fuels, energy, the labor market, immigration, all of that. There was also a pragmatic move and why people voted for Trump, because at least his marketing game during the election was for that, and also saying, hey, this is what we're going to do. Well, having changed the underwear, I can see that, oh, so far, some of these pragmatic things, their actions are actually being taken towards that. Hey, we're looking at where there's waste and corruption, which, to be fair, if Elon Musk had teamed up with the Biden administration and started rooting this stuff out, yeah, not too many people would care too much about that. They'd be like, "Oh, wow, look at all the corruption. Well, I'm glad, they're on the job." But because Elon teamed up with the evil bad man, he's now enemy. He's prime enemy number 2. Like, you flipping idiots. But going back to point, conservative people or conservative legislators and politicians, what happened? Not only do they handle pragmatic stuff, but they started doing things that imposed their worldview upon the rest of the country, whether they wanted it or not. They were doing exactly the same thing that the opposing team was doing. So now you're getting the exact same thing. People have the most horrible time to restrain themselves. I feel like if either party just stuck to governance as we're going to take care of matters of, taxation and protection and quality of life, basic stuff, pragmatic things versus, well, we have these beliefs and we think the world should operate this way because this is what we believe. And also, we get to make the rules now. If they didn't do that, anyone, either side of the aisle, they'd stay in these offices and have more influence for a hell of a lot longer. But they're dumbasses. They're human. They give into their impulses, and when they get the keys to the car, it's like they're getting them for the first time, and they ruin it. They mess it all up. And that's why people say, "Yeah, I've had enough of this." And they change the underwear again. Hey, this is the clean underwear, so we're going to change it. The economic stuff is just ancillary to everything, where it's coincidental. Well, we're able to make a change because things were bad and they said stupid stuff, and we're able to amplify their stupidity that they earned rightfully. So I was going to make a side observation too. I've noticed when it comes to imposing their worldviews upon the rest of society, at least the United States, the left, the social political left, always seems to force people to do things. Maybe that's why that section is more, they're much more not communistic. I don't want to use that word, but not communal. The terms, I'll jump because the term will come to my mind. On the right, they impose a worldview by restricting what people are able to do. They take away people's right to choose to do something. They're more individualistic in nature, but they take away the right, the choices that people have or had. Whereas on the left, uh, God, the word's not coming to me. They're like the Borg. They're where it's more collective. They're more collectivist in nature, where it's our individual identity is more identified by the whole, and that carries over. That's why it is like in large dwellings like cities, there's a much more, I guess you could say, collectivist characteristic, and not in a bad way, to a city. I've had that experience where I've lived in suburban towns and I've lived in the city itself, and the city has this, because of the density, because of the tightness of space and how many people are packed into the neighborhoods energetically, you're forced to share space with people. And I think there's almost like a forced politeness where you learn to allow other people to be themselves. You learn to give people room to be themselves, and just like, well, okay, they're doing their thing, but you know what? They're not forcing their ways into my face. They're not being dicks. They're just being them. And if you have an issue with them, well, that's for you to take up with that person. That's your own biases. So be it. And you also receive that as well, where you learn to receive that bit of a slack. And there's sort of a shared identity in that characteristic is what kind of helps shape the identity of people, like, say, in Chicagoans, that they have that shared characteristic. Whatever neighborhood they're in, that's what they can identify by. And I can definitely say, when you go into a more, because I went from like a suburban town setting to into the city for a decade and a half, and back into a more suburban layout type of thing, where things are quieter, things are spaced out more. You don't feel, you have a better sense of room. Where I used to live in a condo building, a small condo building that didn't have cement walls and floors. And so you'd hear noise. Here in your house, you can make whatever the hell noise you want. You want to play your drums, you can play your drums. It doesn't matter. You've got a backyard. You have your own space, and you don't have to share it to the same degree. And that's why I want to say there's that common characteristic of that somewhat collectivist nature, in a way where you're all part of that collective, that common identity, that tight shared space. And I want to say there that within the whole giant equation, that little part plays a part into why do large cities lean to the political left? Why do they, in the US, why do they lean blue? Why do they have certain common characteristics of ideology and viewpoints and governance? Well, there you go. And so in that collectivist nature, it's you, if you're different from us, that's not okay. You need to be like us. And so you are forced to conform to the rest of the whole, to what people believe to be their viewpoint, how they view the world. Whereas in the more individualistic side, it's like, well, we have our identities and we don't want you to change these identities. So we're going to take away your choice and your voice and your right to do that, so it doesn't change us. And it's just so interesting. God, there are so many nasty things I want to call people right now, just because they're blind to this. And yeah, they treat politics like sports, and God, it's a bunch of effing idiots. But whatever, they're going to do what they do. And I'm going to continue to point it out and be critical and just, sometimes vent how I feel about it. So be it. But yeah, there we go. People can't leave well enough alone. They can't just say, well, people, they're going to do what they're going to do. I'm going to do what I'm going to do. And that's fine. I'm not going to impose my worldview of beliefs on them. They're not going to impose their worldview of beliefs on me. Well, guess what? That doesn't happen. And here we are. But at least we can identify this, and we have a starting point to try and fix things and get along just a little bit better and behave a little nicer to one another. So let's make an effort, please. All right. I'm going to wrap it up. Follow along. Twitter, Facebook, YouTube. I don't think there's any other platforms yet. So be well. Talk to you soon, everyone.